All right, it appears we are live. It
Yeah.
always says one, and I'm like, but does that just mean you? We have one
Yeah.
guest, and it is you. No, here we go. People are joining us.
It's
Which
kind of
is
nice that they set it to one right to start, you
no, it's
know?
true. We're not staring at zero. That would be a little bit uncomfortable. But no, people are joining us on their lunch, which we love. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for being here. We have the chat going, so let us know where you're hopping in from. I will be doing my best to monitor it as we chat, as Liz and I chat about all things book club. So you can drop in questions. We'll try to get to everything. But I'm so grateful to all of you for joining us for a bit on your lunch break, and I'm so grateful to Liz from Open Book Club, who, from where I sit, seems to have this. I'm sure it was a lot of work behind the scenes and like duck feet moving under the water, but seems to have this meteoric rise as like the queen of New York City book clubs. You are always announcing the coolest book club meetings and collaborations and enterprises and all these fun things. So, yeah, I'm so excited to be chatting with you today about this like really crucial part of the book community.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I remember so distinctly when we met at a Substack party and being very, very intimidated walking in. So it's very sweet
What?
to hear you say all of these kind things about Open Book Club and everything that's happened. It's been a journey. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for joining me. Everyone, let us know, like any comments, let us know where you're jumping in from. Tell us if your own book club has a really fun name. I always love those. Something I do for book clubs when they say they're reading one of my books is that I'll make them a little like video greeting to play at their meeting, where I'm just sort of like, hi, I'm Andy Bartz. Thank you so much for reading Last Ferry Out or whatever. But I love when they have weird names and it gets, it's like, bitches, stitches, and books. And I'm like, hi, bitches, stitches, and books. Like, thanks for reading The Last Ferry Out or whatever. So if you have a fun book club name, I would love to hear that too in the chat. I will be trying to keep an eye on it and answering questions. But let's dive in. For those of you who are not familiar, or for those of you who are familiar but don't know your protagonist, I was going to say villain origin story, your protagonist origin story.
I
Liz
can
from
do
Open
villains
Books.
all.
And hello, we have a Moab. Oh, hi. We have a friend of mine down in Moab joining us. But I would love to hear, how did you have the idea to start Open Book Club? And then how did you sort of grow it into what it is today, which is this like many sort of mixed media phenomenon that exists in the real world and the internet and everywhere in between?
Yeah, Open Book Club has very humble origins. I will say it was not something that I had planned out perfectly and then decided to, meticulously launch. It was just I was in a book club with a group of friends. One of my roommates from college invited me to join a book club that she was starting up with another friend. And the first meeting, I think we read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which is a great book club book, lots to discuss there. And it was maybe 5 people in this book club. And every single month, everybody wanted to bring a friend who promised they would do all of the reading. And they were very, very excited about it. And after a few months of that, I live in New York City. That's where this was all happening. After it got to 15, 20 people, no one had an apartment that could fit that many people. We hosted our last meeting, which we didn't know was our last meeting at the time, tragically. We ran out of wine glasses at the girl's apartment. She didn't have
No.
a bottle opener. It was very we just it grew very quickly, and kind of what I think happens a lot with friends book clubs. No one quite wants to step on toes and be taking too much leadership or picking what to read. But then as a result, we didn't really pick the next date, didn't really pick the next book. So kind of fell off. But I was so inspired by joining the book club. I had so much fun reading, meeting new people. It was a lot of friends of friends. So I wanted to start something like it, but with a little bit more structure, and basically just posted a TikTok. I had never really posted on TikTok before. I did not know anything about how to use social media more professionally. I was barely posting on my personal page, to be honest. And I didn't have any photos of it. I took a screenshot of a Pinterest post of a glass of wine and a stack of books and just put some text over it saying, does anyone want to join my book club? And I'm part of a co-working space that's very community oriented and creative and entrepreneurial, and they're very flexible with hosting events. So I just asked the founder, who's also a good friend of mine, if I could host this book club meeting at the space because I didn't want a bunch of strangers from the internet coming to my apartment. And the post ended up going kind of viral. I didn't have enough followers at the time to even put a link in my bio. So I had to have people comment and I would DM them the RSVP, which was just a party full. And I think because of that, so many people were commenting that it ended up just getting a bunch of traction. And I had set out maybe 20 people would come to that book club meeting. I had already texted ahead of time some friends and people in the co-working space to see if they would come, thinking like, okay, well, 10 of my friends, maybe 10 new people who see this TikTok. And I ended up having, I think, 150, 180 people sign up on this party full. Strangers were Venmoing me. I said Venmo $5 so I can buy wine and pizza for everyone. And I was having all of these strangers Venmo me. And that was kind of the start of it. But we did a second meeting for that same book so we could get more people there. And it was just immediately a really fun, a really great group, and just a lot of excitement from people in New York.
Yeah. That's so wild. So you had like 2 meetings for this actual book. You gave it 2 dates. And then how did you run the event? Were you sort of basing it on the small group you had with your friends? Were you leading a discussion? Was it more free flowing? Like, how did you make it run?
I always knew I wanted the meetings to have kind of a cocktail party feel, just because that's what I enjoy attending. And so the way that it was structured is I had written discussion questions. I also love writing. I love writing a prompt. I love a dinner party prompt. I know some people are not games people and they think it's a little lame, which I do get. My sister I'm always trying to break out a game at a family function. My sister is like, this is kind of just lame. Like we don't need to be doing a game right now, but I love a dinner party game. So I always love, writing discussion prompts. And basically what I did for those first meetings, and it's still pretty similar to the format I use now, is I would write little discussion prompts. I printed them out on a piece of paper and they were at the center of every table. Mm-hmm. And everyone would sit in a group of kind of 4 to 6 people and have the discussion prompts there. And I would give people maybe 30 minutes to meet everyone and get started on the conversation. And if you want to use the prompt, it's there for you. You definitely don't have to. Some people, conversation just flows more organically. Other people, you want to talk about a specific thing and having a question there kind of helps facilitate that. It's kind of cocktail party style. You sit down with a couple people at a small table, and then after around 30 minutes, people rotate and explore kind of a new set of questions and meet new people. Because so many, like the book club that I was in that inspired this, such a big part of it for me was just connecting with new people over a shared reading. Yeah. And so getting an opportunity to talk to a bunch of people there in a more intimate setting, I think is a huge part of what made that book club really fun for me and what makes Open Book Club really fun for people in the city.
Yeah. Was there a part of you that was like nervous to be meeting with like strangers and like these are people from the internet with like, what was your feelings on that? And like, what would sort of be It's like, I found this cool sounding one on like Meetup, but they're strangers. And what if they're psychopaths?
Yes, I definitely was. So I was really nervous about who would show up. What I have found though, is the people who come to events, especially around a specific interest group, it self-selects to be a crowd of people that are probably very similar to you. Like if we both are excited about the same book and are the type of person who would show up, not necessarily knowing anyone, to a bar to talk about it, you probably actually have a ton in common already. And you don't have anything to be worried about. It's not like, they just randomly selected somebody from TikTok to show up at your event. It's even just who tends to see the content that I put out on the algorithm. They're likely in New York. They're a young woman. They are interested in reading. Like, some very broad, like they're in their 20s and 30s. Yeah, I was very, very fearful of that in the beginning, but if you like the same book as someone, you have a ton in common, and it's fun to meet those people. And it feels
Yeah.
very serendipitous to end up in the same room with someone. And maybe, I mean, people at book club have become very good friends, but also you'll sit down and realize that you're from the same
Yeah.
area of the state as someone, or you went to the same school, or there's lots of different connections that become obvious once you're there.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. It's like people are really busy and it takes a lot. I mean, think of yourself. Like it takes a lot to get you to like put on clothes and walk to the subway and take the subway and like go do something. So the people who are choosing to do this, like probably don't have nefarious, ends, probably
Yes.
not a whim. It's probably like, no, I genuinely want to go and discuss this book with other like-minded people. So I feel like, yeah, doing it in a public space makes sense to me. It'd be different if you were inviting like strangers into your home. But that makes a lot of sense to me that the people who show up tend to be like kind of your people. Did you solicit feedback after the first one and sort of adjust some things based on it? Or were there just some observations you made and some things you changed as a result to make kind of improve the experience?
Yeah, I used to, after every single meeting, I would invite people. I would kind of like make them give me feedback to join
Yeah.
our group chat because I really wanted to make the events something that people wanted to go to. And so it used to be I had a Geneva group chat, which is kind of similar to WhatsApp, just a large group chat platform. And after each event, I would have a little QR code, usually just at the door or at the bottom of the discussion questions. And I would say, oh, well, if you fill out the Google form on this, which is feedback of what did you think of the time, location, the drinks that we had, the snacks that we had, the format, the discussion questions, just probably 10 questions of just basic kind of feedback like that. At the bottom would be the link to join the group chat. And usually people wanted to join the group chat. I was very fortunate that book club took off pretty quickly. And so it used to be that tickets would be selling out very, very quickly. And I would always put them in the Geneva first because I really wanted to encourage community. And the way that you get that community is you need people to come a bunch of times in a row. So like you need people showing up consistently and being able to get to know each other and have multiple touch points. So I would always, if someone was there, would want to give them an opportunity to come back and sustain the community. So everyone wanted to be in the Geneva because that was kind of how you secured your early tickets to the next event. And the group chat was fun too. People would talk about what they were reading, if they were going to other literary events in the city, things like that. So it was a good kind of a win-win of I got amazing feedback and then people got to get a bit more invested in the community as well. So, and I definitely made a lot of changes to the programming and books and things like that based on the feedback that I got.
Can you give a couple examples of like changes you made based on feedback that like you were like, oh, if I were starting over in a new city, like I would do this from the start?
Mm-hmm. So one thing in the beginning, it was all short stories and essays. The idea being I'm posting this on TikTok. I have no idea if I can and I had no platform. I didn't feel like I had earned people's trust to get them to buy a book and read a whole book and then come to a meeting. So the premise was all short stories or essays that you could read or listen to on your subway to the event. So it'd be like 20 or 30 minutes. So I knew that I was ready to graduate into books based on feedback. People were like, yeah, we would plan a month in advance instead of just, a week or two out. We would get a book, we would read the whole thing. So things like that, kind of content wise, were really helpful to know when people were feeling like, let's make this a book club.
Yeah. Really.
And same with the formatting things of, I used to have it be every table would have a set discussion. So table 1 would be talking about this topic. Table 2 would be talking about this topic. But now having all of the questions are the same for each location. So people can mix around a little bit more, but still talk about every theme in my discussion guides.
Got it. Yeah. So you're not like missing one of them if you're at a different table.
Exactly.
Great. These are all great tips for anyone who's like thinking about doing this in their own city, at their own community. Talk to me about the Substack of it all. How did Substack even become a part of this equation?
Yeah. So at first it was very tactical. I really did not like, and still I think have a lot of friction posting on Instagram and TikTok. It's just not, anyone who's had to post on there probably can relate to this to some extent of, it's just not always fun. You don't really know if a video is going to do well or if no one's going to see it. And it was a lot easier just to directly communicate with people over email. If you know you're interested in book club, people were just like, can I just give you my email address? Even for a wait list for events, it's so much easier to just have people's email, send them a note. Here's what's going on. Here's how you sign up, instead of relying on an Instagram algorithm, or TikTok in particular can be really peaky. Sometimes your post goes viral, gets a ton of views, but the same post a month later, I kind of use the same format for all my announcement posts. If the song isn't right, if the pictures aren't quite right, it wouldn't necessarily get traction. So the email list was initially just, I want to be able to communicate with people more directly, to send them the events that we're doing, give them opportunity to sign up. And then Substack is still a relatively new platform. So I would say I got on early, but was still kind of figuring out what's the best tool for this newsletter to be on. It was on, I think, MailChimp initially, but I was very curious about Substack. It seemed like a place that was much more fun to post on than Instagram or TikTok. And I could use the newsletter features, I could use the chat features, and the people on Substack seemed to also be people that would be interested in book club. So I ended up using notes and things like that to share more about the book club. But yeah, it kind of just happened. Initially, it was a very practical decision. And then I just had fun being on Substack and wanted to test out creating long form newsletter content. And yeah, I've had fun writing a couple of personal essays on here, even though I will say the Substack is, for the most part, in Open Book Club's case, it's just updates about what we're reading and when we're meeting and things like that.
Right. It's primarily serving as like an email list with information about events and stuff. Can you kind of bring us up to speed? So you started with these, two events, quickly started to learn from them. And since then, some things I've noticed is that your book club meetings are gaining partners, and you're holding them in more interesting places, leading up to your big announcement within the last, I think, week. So can you kind of bring us up to speed on how you've grown since then?
Yeah, so it was initially, at my co-working space. We would meet every Thursday, read an essay. Eventually, I was just abusing this co-working space. Luckily, founders are good friends of mine, but I'm like, I can't be here every Thursday having a bunch of people come in. And it was also just a lot of work to host it there, because I would be schlepping a case of wine in from the discount liquor store in Brooklyn near where I live. I used to order a bunch of cheese and crackers. I was slicing and dicing everything. It's like, okay, I think I want to go to bars where they already have this infrastructure, and basically I think I just DM'd one of my things. There's no one I won't DM. That is one of the rules that by. So I'm sure that I just DM'd a bunch of bars that I go to or that I knew were kind of friendly to event hosts, and started hosting at those venues. And that worked really well. They can serve alcohol, they have snacks. It's kind of a vibe. I really liked book club always feeling a bit cooler. Yeah. That I didn't want it to feel like school. I didn't want it to feel too pretentious. It's just quite casual. It feels like you're just having a very good conversation with friends at a bar, which is pretty important to me. And so, hosting them at bars worked really well for facilitating that. And then I got so lucky. I really don't know how some of the partnerships happened. I'm quite surprised by a lot of them myself. I think literature is quite hot right now for brands. I think as we see the rise of AI and that sort of technology, and people, super addicted to the phones and screens, spending more time alone. There's also a strong counter push
Yes.
into physical books and touching paper and meeting in person and more analog trends. And I think a lot of brands are very interested in being associated with that
Yeah.
kind of counter trend to be more in person and more physical. So I think that I frankly just got very lucky with happening to be in this trend and have been fortunate to have brands who were excited about books reach out. And I think because book club does have this kind of cool vibe, they're very open to me doing cool and creative things. And I think whenever I work with a brand, what I'm thinking is like, oh, how can I use this to do something that book club could have never done on its own?
Yeah.
And that is usually how I get very creative of, oh, what's just something kind of crazy that people will be into that I could have never pulled off without a bigger brand kind of backing it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't, people ask me that more. I wish I had more advice on how to make that happen yourself. I very don't really do any outbound on brand partnerships or things like that. I just wait to see who comes to me because you really can't predict. I would have never guessed some of these brands would reach out because I wouldn't think they were at all interested in books. So it's just kind of hard to predict who has a campaign that they think a book club would be a good fit for. So
Yeah.
I just leave the DMs open and see what happens.
DMs are open. Can you give us, I'm so interested in sort of the nuts and bolts of how it goes from like you getting a DM from a brand to you actually, hosting this really interesting creative event, whether it's with like a cannabis company, whether it's with, maybe you could just give us an example, whether you want to name check them or not, of like, okay, so they were like, let's do something. Like, how do you actually start growing that into, a thematic, interactive, community-based in-person event? Like, how would that actually work?
Yeah, I think a recent example is the Travel Agency, which is a big cannabis dispensary in New York. And yeah, they slid into the DMs. I actually think I have my email in my bio, so I actually think they emailed me. They were above the DM, which is completely fine. And they are basically just one of their things. They're known for having really cool creative marketing. So I was very excited when they reached out. And just usually it starts with a basic intro call of what are you interested in? What drew you to book club? And then because I have this community, usually there's somebody who I know who's not necessarily affiliated with the brand, but like is a user of the product or does marketing in a similar field or like has some connection. So I'll usually just get advice from friends and community members. For the travel agency, it was actually the roommate of a girl who comes to book club. So I was like, oh, amazing. Your roommate comes all the time. She's great. I really like her. She knows the vibe. So like usually New York is obviously a massive city, but a lot of people who live here know that it's also kind of a small town. You run into the same people all the time. It's really dense. And especially with a community, usually you're not too many degrees of separation away from anyone. So yeah, usually just understanding what they're looking for and then kind of pitching them on some ideas of, oh, do you guys want to do we did for travel agency, one really big in-store event because they were curious. There's stores for anyone who hasn't been there. They're like going into the Apple store for the first time, but it's all cannabis products. They have really cool art. Everything is very high tech. So they wanted to do something to get people in the store because going into a dispensary can be quite intimidating for the first time. So like, oh, why don't we make it more of a social experience? And yeah, for that, I just thought it would be fun. We did a BuzzFeed style quiz that you would take at the beginning talking about what you like reading, the last book you read, what you're looking for, some kind of just silly ones like which Sex and the City character do you think you are? And then we paired everyone with a book that we thought they would really like and a cannabis product that kind of matched the vibe of that book. So we did Everyone Loves Talking About Lost Lambs on Substack. It's quite a buzzy book. So we're like, oh, we'll do Lost Lambs, which is quite funny with a very giggly cannabis product. So just doing things that are fun like that, an event, I usually try to think of what is an event that I myself would want to go to
Yeah.
and use that as a framework of like, oh, well, if we pick a really buzzy book that people are seeing on Substack that they maybe want to read already and pair it with a product that they're maybe curious about, but wouldn't take the jump on or wouldn't plunge right into,
Mhm.
how can we pair those together in a fun, creative event that, yeah, will just get people excited. And
Yeah.
usually if you can convey that to a brand in a compelling way, they'll get on board.
Yeah, yeah, they'll understand the value of it. I'm always super nosy about money, so I am curious. Like, they're reaching out, and they, in this case, they offered a space, so that was like sort of a in kind thing that they gave. In terms of like the books, and like, did they do a mass buy of the books? Are you going to publishers and getting donated books? Are people's ticket fees covered? Like, how is sort of the economics of it working in as much detail as you would like to share?
Totally. People are always very, very curious. I will say, like, the number one question people ask me when I talk about doing book club, they're like, and that's your job? Like, people
Well,
are
wait,
very
is it?
comfortable asking how I make money, which is funny, but yeah, I've gotten quite comfortable with the question.
Okay.
So usually what I do for brand events, so the typical book club programming, if it's a book club meeting or author talk that I'm running that's just open book club, those are ticketed events.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's how I can do this and have my own space and spend all this time making really good programming. But then for brand events, I generally make all of these brand events free. So, like the travel agency event where you go into the store, get your free book, which is, by the way, a new hardcover, not cheap.
$30
And then
minimum.
actually, yeah, doing full size products as well. So it was a great little goodie bag that we had for people. But yeah, I love pitching to brand partners, like something that makes brand sponsoring community events a lot more compelling than brand sponsoring individual influencers is that the community members and people who attend the event and are kind of being marketed to are the ones who benefit from it. Like, I think that
Yes.
we're kind of moving away from brands sending an influencer to some tropical island vacation and the influencer is posting their first class plane ticket and all the products that they're getting, and then their audience being expected to like buy this makeup product. I think that we're kind of slowly moving away from that because it doesn't feel good as an audience member to be sold to in that way. You're like, wait, what?
Right.
I'm watching this influencer, now they get to go to Bora Bora for free. Like, that's kind of crazy. But I think a lot of brands are moving more towards community marketing. And I think that's really fun because then my audience is the one who gets the book and the goodie bag and the fun experience. So I like to make all of those events free. And then I'll ask the brand to cover, like the travel agency bought a lot of those books. I'll also work with publishers and see if they want to be featured and if they'd be open to donating it. But yeah, the brand covers the cost of the event and then will also compensate me for bringing the community in. So kind of a win-win for everyone,
Yeah.
audience members and me, because I'm like, oh, I get to do an event and make it free for everyone and still get paid.
Yeah. Yeah. That is it. So wait, so is this your job? Is this now like full time what you're working on?
Yeah, book club is what I do full time now, which is so cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to circle back to like choosing books, but I also want to be sure we talk about your space. So like, which would you rather share about first?
Yeah, let's talk about the space because I mean, it's brand new and I'm super, super excited about it.
So yeah, so you have a brick and mortar space that is explicitly and exclusively devoted to being a community space for Open Book Club that
Yeah.
is opening its doors soon. You just announced it, right? Like, how did this come about, and what's
Yes.
the story there?
So I've been hosting at bars, restaurants, creative space for the past a little over 2 years. And it's just a lot of overhead to pick a location, coordinate with them. And it has also taken away from kind of the third space community feel that I think
Mhm.
hosting at my co-working space had. In the early days, I would, as I kind of mentioned, I was bringing the wine in. Every table that you sat at had like bottle of sparkling water, bottle of wine. You could self-serve. It was very it really felt like you were just in someone's living room.
Yeah.
And the co-working space that I'm a part of is super creative. It was in a Soho loft, just a very cool space. And I do think some of that was lost when we started hosting in
Mhm.
bars and restaurants, because you're buying a ticket, you're maybe getting a copy of the book, and then maybe you want to have that second glass of wine on a Thursday night and you're immediately hit with like $16 Square Pay with a 30% tip option. It just ends up being a lot. And I really want to host more events and more types of events. But popping up to all these different places, it can be hard to make it feel really consistent, make sure all of the venues are really a good fit for us. So kind of got to this place where I was like, I think what I need to do is get my own space. I can set it up perfectly for Open Book Club. I can really have that third space and community feel where you go in, you know you're going to recognize someone if you're a consistent member who's showing up. You know where all of the stuff is. Like, you know where you can get a drink, where your favorite seat is. Like, kind of really have that consistent community feel. And then be able to host just so many more events and different types of events. Right now, we really do book club meetings and author talks. But I really miss our short story meetings, our essay meetings. So just being able to host more stuff that people definitely miss from the old space, but really do it in a way that feels right, that I get to kind of control creatively and get to play around with. So that's the vision of the space. I got the keys a month ago. I was very ambitious and hosted my first event there like 10 days after getting the keys. So I didn't announce that it was the Open Book Club studio when I hosted that event, but have since announced it. And all of our book club meetings at the end of July are going to be there. So I'm kind of frantically furnishing it, getting everything set up. So we'll have a bunch of tables and chairs and glasses, and it'll look nice and cute, have a big bookshelf. It'll definitely be a process. I think one thing that's really cool about book club being such a strong community and so many people having come for so long is I'm very comfortable building it in front of everyone. So it's not going to be this ribbon cutting ceremony where people come into the studio and it's already perfect and done. I am really excited to host events there. Like the first event, truly, I assembled all of the chairs the day that the event was happening. We had a little mix up with the delivery. So it was basically an empty room and chairs. And, we got creative with the lighting. All the photos, I mean, they're on my Instagram. They really turned out beautifully. It was a very, very cool event. But I think what's awesome about having the community is like getting to build it with them and with their feedback. And so people know it's going to change a little bit every time you go for the next few months. There's going to be new art on the walls. We're going to finally get glasses. We've been using plastic cups for the first event. Things like that where I'm like, oh, it doesn't have to be perfect. And in fact, it's better if it's imperfect and we get to build the right thing together versus doing this kind of unveiling and realizing, oh no, these seats are actually super uncomfortable and like you're leaning too far back to have a good conversation with someone. So it's an iterative kind of community-driven project.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, a lot of my following is authors, and it's sort of reminding me a little bit of how people talk about how you need an author brand, and that sounds really exhausting to people. But really, I think of it as like, I like showing the imperfect parts of the process to my community, to readers, to fans, to fellow authors, and just like being authentic. And it just feels like in this year, in 2026, the worst thing you can be is like perfect and pristine and soulless. And so there's something very soulful about whether it's like sharing your process as an author or talking about like, oh my God, I just realized I need to rewrite the entire second half of my book. Or in your case, like I have this space, like not everything is going to go off without a hitch, but I'm going to like bring you in as I figure it out and get it right. So I think that's really, I don't know, relatable in how we're showing up in the world in 2026. Like, let's be community based. Let's be imperfect. Versus, I feel like even a few years ago, it was much more like if you put it on social media or if you're showing it to others, it needs to be a very particular way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do still get that urge. It is a bit, yeah, I think it still feels really scary to acknowledge publicly, oh, I made a mistake, or oh, I have to do this thing over again, or yeah, being seen trying and failing in public. It is difficult, but I do think it's a better way to show up than, yeah, maybe putting on a more perfect display that
Yeah.
isn't really,
Facade.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone can see right through it. And everyone is just like, gross. Is that AI? Like, no, we are people. We are full of our own flaws. And that's like what we love about it. And certainly a big part of why I think there's been such a renaissance in book clubs. We talked about this beforehand of how like, yeah, people looking for community, people looking to connect in real life, people, like you said, the physical books, paper, experiences, memories, feels very much like what people are seeking. But I promised I was going to go back to, and I think this is applicable to anyone listening here who is in or wants to start a book club, choosing the right books. How do you go about that? To what extent are you thinking about tying it in with the event itself, making it more, thematically linked? What qualities make a book a great fit for book club? Do you read them all first? All those things.
People ask me that actually all the time. They're like, did you read this already? I'm like, yes. I read all of the books before we pick them as book club books. Um, yeah, okay. I have a lot of thoughts on this. I don't know how many of these are applicable to just a friend group putting on a book club, because I think some of these might be a little intense if you're just running a friend group book club, because you might want to be a little bit more, I guess, chill or like relaxed with it. But I have very specific criteria that I'm looking for in a good book club book. And the biggest thing is you have to pick something that people are not going to agree on. Like, it has to be an average 3 to 4 star read. We can't do something that everyone is just gonna love and then not have anything to talk about. That is my biggest thing that I think people get wrong in their book club books, is it's like, oh, well, if I'm picking the book for book club, like I want everyone to like it. No, I understand that urge. You do not want everyone to like it. You want people not getting in fights, but you want them to be able to disagree. That's what makes a conversation and a book club meeting very interesting to talk about. If everyone's just like, oh, well, I loved the writing and I loved the characters, it's like, we got to give us a little bit more. So that's my biggest thing. But I understand if it's a friend group book club and you're constantly bringing in books that people hate, it's going to be a little bit tricky. But that's one of my biggest criteria. And then usually when I'm thinking about the book club calendar, I'm trying to mix in a bunch of different things. I usually like to have some authors that have newer books coming out, particularly debut authors, just because I think it's really important to support the New York City literary community. So like if I can read a book from a local debut author and if they're able to come to Open Book Club, that's really, really compelling for me, because I want to support authors who are alive today and that's a little behind the scenes. Yeah. But I also understand that not everyone wants to buy, people in book club at least do not like hardcover books. So I'm conscious of picking too many books that are $30 hardcovers that you can't get at the library. So I'll usually try to balance that with some backlist titles that are just a little bit more accessible for people. So I'll usually check and see, like, when we're doing this, like, oh, is there a book that's at the library with not a long hold or ideally no hold that is already out in paperback that you could get new or used, or maybe that's Spotify has a good audiobook selection. I know not everyone is into the Audible Spotify, which I completely understand, but I will check to see, oh, it just makes it easier for people if they can just get started right away if they already have one of those. So thinking about, some newer titles, some that are more accessible for people. And then kind of there's a bit of seasonality to the selections as well, of like books that people are probably wanting to read in the summer versus winter. They are a bit different. So I try to think through that as well. And then often, like, I just try to pick something that I personally, this is a kind of a paradigm that I think about a lot with book club. I've already kind of mentioned it in previous answers where it's like, oh, I want to host an event that I would want to go to. Often I just trust my personal taste. Am I reading this book and thinking, oh, this came up in 2 conversations that I had with people this week? Or can I imagine specific book club members having a ton to say about this? And really trusting and leaning on my personal taste and intuition of, oh, I'm reading this and I want to talk to other people about it. And not in like, not necessarily, sometimes I think this happens. I do like reading the occasional romantasy or book like that. And I'm like, sometimes those, I think it's like, I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this with people. But for a good book club book, you want to talk about the ideas in it, not necessarily just be like, this is happening. It's like something that's really making you reflect on your own life or reflect on the world around you and how you move through it. So I really try to pay attention to books that make me feel like they're changing my outlook and just kind of follow that and set up a discussion around it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's sort of the like book club equivalent of the advice for authors to write the book you want to read. Like, right,
Yeah.
you are going to be the first audience. Like, you have to trust your own taste to put it out there. But I am curious, again, from the author's point of view, so something that we authors keep hearing is like, book clubs are so important. You need to like get your book picked up by book clubs. And so I'm curious if you have any advice, whether it's in, you even sort of talked about the ideation process and the deciding what to write next. Like, think about, what's going to tie into big themes, what's going to make people really reflect on themselves and what's happening in the world. So I'm wondering if both big picture, you have thoughts of what authors can be doing, but then also more specifically, like whether it's outreach, should we be reaching out to book clubs? Should we be putting on social media, I'll be happy to join your virtual book club, or I can send, bookmarks and signed book plates. Like, what are the things that authors could be doing to sort of foster connections with book clubs, both the big ones and sort of the more official ones, and like the little small, your aunt has it with 4 of her friends kind of thing?
Yeah. So one thing I will say for authors, or I guess maybe this is publishers, but author adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
I have found basically no relationship between a publisher saying that a book is a good book club book and it actually being a good book club book. And I don't know, oftentimes, I'm sure you're familiar with this in public, like the categories that publishers use to communicate a book to a bookseller is a bit different, where it's like, oh, well, we just want it to go on this shelf or be in this category. Like, I found that something will just be labeled as a good book club book if it has a mother-daughter relationship. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't like necessarily, you know what I mean? Where it's like, sometimes these book marketings, you're like, I'm just not sure if this marketing term was really meant for me to see, or if this is maybe some sort of behind the scenes, you just think that women will like it. I really don't know. But if a publisher says this is a good book club book, I don't count it against them, but I'm certainly not immediately convinced of that. Like, I'll let you know if it's a good book club book.
Like, I'll be the judge.
I'll be the judge of that. No problem. But I think for authors, when I first reached out to authors to have them come to book club events and support, I felt like I was reaching out to celebrities. Like, I didn't know that this was a thing that I could do. I was shocked that people responded, that they were excited, that they actually showed up. So I think any way that you can make it clear to people in the way that you show up online that this is something that you're interested in doing, I think that goes a really long way. Like, if I had seen an author say, I am happy to do this type of event, I would have felt, because as I've said, I am in the DMs. I'm very active in that space. But I do think a lot of people are not as bold when it comes to that. And so if they saw there was some indication already that the author was interested in doing that, I think that would go a really, really long way, because people just don't know. And you see a name printed on a book, it looks so professional. They're on the shelf at a bookstore that you go to. Like, there's a lot of remove that I think readers feel from authors. This is actually something I think the romance community does really, really well, is like within that community, there's amazing organic relationships between readers and authors that I think for whatever reason, other categories of books haven't been able to recreate. But I think that's really cool and special, that relationship. So any way to, and maybe like looking to romance authors to see how they indicate that or how they behave with their fans. If I was an author, I would probably look into, because I think that's like one of the coolest things. It's like a very grassroots, organic community relationship that a lot of those authors have that I think it'd be awesome if other genres were able to replicate in some way.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's amazing advice. And I'm like kind of laughing as you're like, oh, it's like reaching out to a celebrity. I'm like, no, this
I
is like
know.
the first time I've worn real clothes like all week. Like we're not fancy people. But it is easy for us to forget that. And it's a good reminder. And this is, I feel like this is like a message I keep coming back to with author advice and get it right. It's like, no one's a mind reader. Like tell them what you want. If you want to join people's book clubs, like reach out and say that. If you want people to reshare, to restack a post of yours, like ask them to restack it. If you want people who know they're going to buy your book to order it, then ask them to pre-order it. Like being really explicit, because your community like wants to help and wants to reach out. And I imagine you're finding this with your open book club community too. And it's like, if you give people marching orders, the people step up. People really do like to be a part of the team.
People go to the author events, and like by nature of you holding a microphone, people are like, oh my gosh, they are an authority figure. It just, I think probably similarly with Open Book Club, because I know all the behind the scenes, and I'm sure a lot of authors are like, I know too much about this novel. They wouldn't believe how this came together. But people really, when they're looking the outside in, they're seeing someone who's achieved a kind of lifelong dream. I know so many readers have aspirations of writing being published. It's such a huge milestone. It's this years-long process that, I think other people are perceiving you in a completely different way often than authors, particularly I think debut authors, are perceiving themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, same thing where you're like opening a space for your book club and like partnering with these amazing brands and hosting these amazing things. It was part of why I was really excited to talk to you, was just to like break it down and be like, I've been in this industry long enough to know that the answer is like never magic or like, it is hard work. It is smarts. It is all those things. But like, it's really like, how did she pull this off? Because from the outside, it looks so flawless, amazing, like smooth sailing. And I very much heavily admire that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I am glad that is how it looks on the outside, but it is just like everything else on the inside. We're taking it day by day, figuring out how we're going to pull this off.
You're building, you're learning as you go. Well, with our last 10 minutes, I want to be sure if people have any questions or comments or like topics to bring up that have to do with book clubs. We are watching the chat. So specifically anything about like your own book club or finding one or joining one, we're happy to talk about those too. I'll keep an eye. But another like piece of advice from you, a little bit of your wisdom I would love, is like if somebody is trying to, let's say they move to a new town and they know they want to join a book club, maybe they're not ready to start their own. How would you advise trying to find one? And like, what are sort of the traits that you think are markers of like, this is going to be a good one? Or is it just trial and error? Like where to begin if you're like, I'm not a member of one yet and I want to be?
Yeah. I think going to a few. I mean, I am certainly not the only book club, book meetup, literary group running in New York City. And I think just going to a few events and seeing what your vibe is, putting yourself out there. I think a good rule is if you go to something, you have to talk to two people before you leave. Things like that. I think it really is just putting yourself out there, giving it a chance, and knowing that it'll take either going to a few different events or going to the same event a few times to see if it's a good fit for you. Looking for stuff where it's at a place that you would already like to go if it's a book that you would like to read,
Yeah.
if they have photos, yeah, just seeing like, oh, do these seem like people who I would want to hang out with?
Yeah.
And I think just being honest with yourself about what you're looking for, what your goals are, and then showing up and just being a bit vulnerable. I think it is quite daunting to go to events, particularly if you're new to a place or if you're going alone. So, yeah, just going there, being vulnerable, and just doing it. I mean, it takes a long time. Moving to a new city is one of the hardest things to do. When you're all alone, like it's just very isolating and lonely. So I have a tremendous amount of appreciation for people who are new to the city, who come out to book club as a way that they want to meet new people and really show up very genuinely and vulnerably. And I will say, when I'm hosting events, I'll usually like look ahead of time and see how many people are new versus returning. And usually I'll just often like say out loud to remind people that everyone is here to meet new people. Because sometimes you go to an event and two people are talking to each other as they go in and you think, oh, they're already friends. Everyone came here with someone and they just met in the elevator on the way up.
Yeah.
They do not know each other. So just reminding people, oh, this many people here are new tonight. And a lot of people, or maybe it's their only second time. And just, reminding people, hey, everyone here wants to meet new people. So if you want to introduce yourself, this is a great opportunity, setting that tone and intention, I think makes a really big difference for people.
Yeah, I love that. And I should say too, you don't have to have just moved to a city to like be looking for more people, in your community and to connect with more people. So I shouldn't limit that. There's plenty of people I've lived in my city for 18 years and I still am like on the hunt for community. So not to be too
exactly.
We have a question from Tracy. Once you take off, Laura, do you think you could consider a little transatlantic online booth for authors based overseas? So maybe we could chat to the odd person too. Yeah, I did want to ask, I both want an answer to that question. And I did want to ask about like virtual elements to these. Like there's all virtual book clubs. There's people like Skyping into in-person book clubs. What are your thoughts on those things?
Yeah, I've definitely prioritized in-person events, and I am curious to explore virtual events. I think, to me, a big part of the magic of Open Book Club is people reading the same thing and being in the same place at the same time. And it's quite hard, I think, to replicate some of that online. Mm-hmm. But there's definitely been times where I'm like, oh, I really want to talk to that author. And I'll just DM an author who lives in another country and be like, is there any chance you're coming through New York? I mean, fortunately, New York is a city that a lot of people, if they're doing a big book tour, and it maybe has a handful of US cities, New York is probably one of the locations that they would pick. So I have been very lucky that I'm based in a place that people travel to. But I definitely have had people that I want to talk to, but they're not here. And so I'm curious to explore it a bit more. But it's just not something I kind of am taking things one step at a time. So I'm like, let me learn how to do the book club. Then I kind of graduated into author talks. And now that I have the space and have the flexibility, like partially I'm just like, I don't think I could do it technically in a venue that I don't own. So I'm like, now that I have my own space, I think getting a little bit more creative about how to do things online. It's something that I do want to explore, but definitely is not something I've done a ton. But I'm like, even this Substack Live was a bit daunting to me. This was actually very seamless and easy to do. So I'm like, I think it's for some reason more intimidating to me than hosting something in person, which is maybe not the right assumption at all.
Interesting. Yeah. We keep trying different things and stretching and growing. One thing I wanted to ask was for anyone who is a host, whether that's a virtual book club or an in-person book club, even just somebody who's been going for a while so they know the host. Do you have any advice for any other learnings or advice you'd pass along for having a great discussion, for making sure that people feel connected to each other. Any tips to pass along to make a really successful book club meeting?
Yeah, I think I am a huge fan of questions and prompts. So if it's one person leading, they can come up with them. But I also know a lot of book clubs that just have everyone come with a question already. But anything like that where you can have people set up a framework so a good discussion can follow. And I think usually just it can be a few minutes. It doesn't have to be a massive exercise, but yeah, just having people come in with something that they're excited to talk about and not present to the group, but yeah, I guess pose to the group. Yeah. I think that makes a really, really big difference. And it can be a few minutes of preparation can get the book club discussion just going off very well. And I also think having I really like a lighter intro question just to get people started. So I usually try to come up with something in the theme of the book, but a very lighthearted, silly question that kind of everyone can answer right off the bat. So everyone has already spoken. Yeah. And then when you go into a more thoughtful discussion of the book, it's just a bit easier to jump in if you've already spoken in the group. So
you're not
something light. I think a not as good version of this, but it can be this simple, is just like, oh, well, what would you rate the book out of 5 stars? Just so everyone can get in to start. But I usually like to make them a bit more creative than that. So.
What's your take on people attending? Should someone attend if they have not finished the book?
I feel strongly that people have to be able to discuss the entire book. So if you come having not finished it, it's okay, but you have to be okay with the book being, if there's a spoiler or something like that, we're discussing the book in full. I feel very lucky. The people in my book club take it seriously. Like, they are finishing the book and they're ready. And occasionally someone will come having not finished it, which it is okay. Life happens, but the discussion has to go on. We can't not talk about the ending. That's usually the best part.
Right. That's probably what what everyone's eager to discuss the most. So show up at your own risk if you haven't finished it, because there will be.
It's very funny. I've had girls come to book club and they're like, we'll be on the same subway train as someone else who's joining, and they're both reading the book, and they'll be like, I've just got to finish it before we go. Which I do love. It's just very sweet having people take it, because it's such a privilege and so nice that, I just don't take it for granted at all that people are going out of their way to read an entire book, often once a month, to participate in these. So I don't take it for granted or take it lightly. It means the world to me that people dedicate a lot of time and energy and attention to finish the entire book before the meeting. And gotta reward that behavior.
We gotta reward that. I love that. I think that's a perfect note to end on. So my last question is just, where can people follow you, find you, keep in touch with you?
So I'm at Open Book Club NYC here on Substack, and Open Book Club on Instagram. And I will say, we have some very exciting, the studio announcement is kind of just the beginning of a lot of really big announcements that I have in the next, kind of for the rest of the summer. So definitely, if you're curious about book club, follow along, because there's a lot more that's coming soon.
Yay. Amazing. Well, Liz, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I am honored that this is your first Substack Live. Thank you so much to all of you who joined us today on your lunch. I hope you got a lot out of it. I know I learned a ton. Everyone follow Liz, keep in touch, and maybe I'll be seeing you, if you're in New York, at the next Open Book Club event.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.